Well, the movie was born at the very moment that my parents died. Within a relatively short time frame, but after a very long process of suffering. And then, shortly afterwards, my first daughter was born, and I was really exhausted. I was tired and I was very unhappy about many things. And the way that I deal with these things is that I'm looking for free spaces, creative spaces for me so that I can write, you know. For me, working is a bit of taking a holiday. And if you've got children, you know that working is far less demanding than taking care of your children. So I started writing about my mother. I wanted to do a rather short film about my mother, but then it started growing and I started thinking about the relationship we had, me and my mother, and then I started thinking about more and more, you know, and everything, including the question of why we are who we are, and why we take the decisions that we are taking, and why we're actually not deciding according to what we wanted, why we haven't become the people that we imagined we'd one day be. So that was a trip into this area of different questions, you know, rather atmospheric, and it was not really product-oriented. I never really wanted to make a movie, I just wanted to get closer to the answers by just writing. And I think what Matthias really manages to do is, in a very positive sense of the word, to have made one of the least romantic movies I've ever seen. And there is this you know, the saying by Bertolt Brecht, you know, don't stare at us so romantically. And I'm paraphrasing. But you know what the lady said, the lady from Mexico just a few moments ago, I found very interesting. Because, you know, people might think about therapy and, you know, therapeutic analysis and, you know, this breaking this up. You know, when he says that people are not supposed to stare so romantically, that's what Brecht said, you know, and I think the movie manages to do that without being cold. It is an emotional film, but it's not a romantic film, you know, it does not have this romantic kind of level put on top of it, or layer on top of it. And I think it's also great to see it being picked up with the music, and that music has so much space in this movie, because, you know, when I first listened to the different pieces of music, you know, I always fell for them at a romantic level, so to speak, you know, it tricked me somehow. And I never understood that the composer said, no, this is not yet it, I will kick out the choir and so forth. And then in the end, you get to hear a music piece that actually gives you an idea of what the arts or what music can actually achieve. And I think the movie achieves the same thing. You know, the very process that we're doing something together, and in the best of cases create a sense of magic that we can then share with an audience, and that actually then has an impact on them, you know, that it's an experience in life that goes beyond the mere message of the movie, or whether it is conveying a concrete hope or not. The very fact that we're doing this together, that we're creating something together, that we're living together, watching this together, that is what I find so great. I find that remarkable, and also remarkable that we keep wanting that the movies or the cinemas were filling up again after Coronas, including the art house cinemas. I really think it's great. You know, I'm trying to prepare as little as possible. And I just try to be as open-minded as possible when going through the day and into the scenes, and to be as open as I can when interacting with my partners. And yes, I read that, you know, that people say that he was cold. But had I prepared, I might have said, okay, this is my task now, to play someone who is acting coldly. But, you know, in those scenes, I realized that I was rather emotional, and it felt rather warm. And that was a nice contradiction, a nice ambivalence. And I never planned for that, you know. I would never enter into a scene saying, okay, after that phrase, it would be great for me to shed some tears, you know. It just happens. You know, when I'm exposed to the scene, or when I really accept this situation and the encounter, and when thinking of the scene with, you know, Corinna and myself, that was a scene of 20 or 24 minutes even. And we just shot that right away without rehearsing it. And I don't know, but I had the impression that when we watched the film that, you know, when we watched the film that quite a bit of that scene was from the first take, this first encounter, you know. And I remember, it may sound stupid, but let me explain it afterwards. You know, when we were done playing, you know, or acting rather, then Corinna, you know, high-fived me. And I know, and I've known Corinna very well. We've, you know, worked alongside each other quite a few sides, and this is not the way she normally, you know, reacts. There was a rather strange gesture for her, but I understood. It was like jumping off a cliff together, and then, you know, hitting the ground together, and then you just congratulate each other for daring to do that, because you never knew what was going to happen before.
Ja, das war tatsächlich das Aufregende.
And that was what was so exciting about it. You know, also to be given the opportunity, to be given the time and the space. And then a last remark on conducting. I actually prepared for that. And yet, it is something that I don't enjoy doing at all. Because I keep thinking, okay, you've got so and so many, you know, self-appointed experts in the audience who would say, no, that is not the right way to go about that. I mean, I had a professional conductor teaching me that, and with who I actually did a lot of conducting. But, you know, when you ask me about inspirations, I looked a lot at Theodor Kurensis, because I really admire him. And yet, when you watch the movie, you would probably not think of Theodor Kurensis. But, you know, when watching Theodor Kurensis, you know, for the first time that I knew that I'd be playing a conductor, or, you know, that, you know, I've watched him before in concerts, but then I thought, now I'm going to watch him more closely. But that's when he started that way. It was, his first gesture was this. And I thought, let me steal that gesture. But I forgot about it, unfortunately. But that was very interesting. And he keeps, you know, making that. And I thought, if I were to do that, then people would think, okay, he didn't have any time for preparation whatsoever. You know what is so pleasant about working with Matthias, and we've made a few films together. You know what's so pleasant is that he's opening such an inspiring space within which you can then freely move around. You know, and with all his life experience, with everything he has in his background, you know, or also the things that you instinctively can contribute, you know, without having to, you know, prepare too diligently. You know, you don't have to work that hard for the preparations. You know, I haven't done that in a while either. Because, you know, by now I've experienced that sometimes it's just better to, you know, just try to, you know, to be not too precise about the things that you try to prepare, because that's one of the great aspects of our profession, you know, in the very intensive moments when you are playing a role, while, you know, playing something also means living to me, you know, that in these intense moments you experience something that you might not actually, you know, register, or that might not register out there in the grander scheme of things in life. But that's what's so great about this profession. And here I can just watch people, and I can really truly understand what these characters are doing. But it also makes me so sad, you know. I was crying rivers because I understood why these characters decided the way they did. And I want to take them by the hand and say, come on, let's go back to the crossroads and now take the right turn. You know, but, you know, I'm not, you know, they always carry around these wrong decisions for the rest of their lives, and then, you know, they open up at the end of their lives, but people haven't talked to each other for 20 years before that. To me, it's a horrible idea that you would have a fight with someone and you would not talk to each other for a month, for half a year, for a year. But there are so many cases where exactly that happens. And it just goes to show how important it is to be courageous enough to go and approach each other and to talk to each other and to tell each other, well, listen, I don't understand this, or why did you do that? And that is the beauty of it, you know. That gives me courage, and it gives me enough strength for other projects that may not be quite as strong as this movie. But it really is about pure love. Although Lars just said that this is perhaps the least romantic movie in a way, it at the same time to me is also a very romantic movie, but it's so much closer to real life than other movies. I hope I managed to answer your question.